All right, everybody. Welcome to the news update. Yeah, breaking news so you don't break your bank. First, foremost, most importantly, I feel much better. Thank you for asking. Anybody who has apparently for like 3 weeks, I had bronchitis, come to find out, and dry cough because it's super dry in Utah, but I am feeling the love. I absolutely am thrilled with where my energy's back. I'm feeling great. So there's the first update. Is for those of you who were following. I even failed to be able to show up for news updates because of my condition. So I'm really, really happy to be there. Next, what the hell is happening in the banking community? So there has been a significant cry for here's the American Banker had an article called Federal regional banks seek new presidents amid call for reforms. The Fed, there's the chief Fed in DC, and then there are regional banks all around the country. If you look at your dollar bills, you can actually see where those dollar bills, which of the regional facilities printed those actual dollar bills, right? So there are numerous requests for reform inside of the banking system. Now, we've discussed in previous updates how many different ways that the Fed or central banking is kind of is slowly becoming passé, right? A number of European banks have moved with crypto-backed currencies. Many DeFi, decentralized finance, is becoming more and more peer-to-peer lending, and which is literally moving the Fed out of the way. And so it's a bunch of stodgy old white guys. Now, I get to say that like comedians. Jewish comedians get to make fun of Jews. Black comedians get to make fun of black folk. Well, I'm an old white guy, so I get to make fun of all the old white guys. So the Fed is being challenged for its malaise, a fancy word for stodgy, old, archaic ideas that are not keeping up with current financial, not trends, because trends sounds like this is evolution. And the Fed is not keeping up with the evolution of decentralized finance and decentralized banking. So that's a thing. The next thing I wanted many of you are familiar with the idea of Web 3.0, and the Web 3.0 in part is actually making a digital presence. So let's say a Chase Bank would have Chase Bank branches online where your avatar can walk into the branch, talk to an avatar of Chase, do your banking right there digitally, but in avatar form, right? Instead of using numbers and, how much would you like to transfer? And you type in the transfer, click the button. You can actually do it via an avatar. Ready Player One is a movie that came out several years ago that was all about the entire world moving to this digital platform. Art imitates life, or does life imitate art, right? Well, holograms are now making an appearance in banking. So remember, I talked about that. Yes, we have our customer service numbers. You can call up your banker, talk to a banker. Some tier 1 and tier 2 banks started using like Zoom calls or video calls for people who you can elect. Would you like a video call? Pretending requires a certain amount of bandwidth, et cetera. And then you're talking face to face. That was a COVID response to building intimacy and relationships with customers. Well, now it's going one more level, it's holograms. So it's kind of a hybrid between Web 2.0, which is what we have right now, and Web 3.0 using a complete avatar. So stay tuned, more there. Yeah. Stay tuned because more things are coming up. Now, I do want to say, no matter where you fall in the political spectrum, the vast majority of tier 1, tier 2 banks are weighing in on the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and so many of them are privatizing the travel in their health benefits of individuals who seek pregnancy counseling and pregnancy issues. But I mean, the list I'm looking at is like boom, boom, all the tier 4 banks and at least half of the all the tier 1 banks and at least half of the tier 2 banks have all weighed in that they are going to they really don't speak to the idea of the Roe v. Wade at all. They simply are making announcements that they're willing to add to their health employee benefits travel to states for particular procedures. So a lot of things happening where banks are showing up for their team members in non-conservative ways compared to what we've done in the conservatism in the past. Now, the thing I want to end on here today is there is a stress test that was coming in based on capitalization for banks. I've been teaching for a long time that over the last, since COVID, there have been record profits for especially the top 10 banks in the country. Half of those, 4 of them are tier 1, 4 of them are tier 2. But they're asking, are they holding too much capital? And the more capital you hold, the capital you hold doesn't get distributed in disbursements or distributions to shareholders, but it also allows you, because usually, depending on whether a particular bank adheres to Basel 1, Basel 2, or Basel 3, those are fancy terms of Basel, Switzerland. It was a conclave of international banking to say how much we should keep in reserve, and we call it fractional reserve banking, right? So if Basel 2 says, yeah, we need to have 10% reserves, that means for every $1 billion you have in reserve, actual in your bank, in the reserves of, and these are not customer deposits, these are banking profits that are held in reserve. If you have $1 billion, you can lend $10 billion because it's a 10-to-1 fractional reserve amount. Well, they're saying that if there's too much being held in reserve, but now we're not lending it, then it's an artificial inflation, not to be confused with irregular inflation. It's an artificial inflation in what's on the bottom line of these banks. They're not going into distributions, so it's not going into the economy. And so keeping reserves in-house and not paying out as profits to the shareholders, there's just a hot little debate. And the Federal Reserve, once again, is stress testing this process through a number of different surveys that are going out to the banks, as well as the stress test of how much are banks able to continue to be a vital source of security and stability in this country. So you can see that the feds are looking for new presidents of the Fed regional banks because they're looking for innovation and kind of new perspective evolution in the process, while at the same time, on the other end of the spectrum, they're actually saying, do you have too much capital? Do we need to flow more capital to the shareholders so that it's in their purview so that they can spend it, use it, save it, or otherwise, and keep the economy moving while it's getting sluggish during this time of scarcity? Or is there too little capital and they need to hold, they hold back more? You guys, there is so much going on. We have 15 minutes and we've used up all 14 and a half of them. So come back next week, same fundable time, same fundable channel. and let's get you dialed in with what's happening in the world of fundability and the banking arena, so that we know how to leverage our fundability for highest profits, partnering with banks instead of being their predators. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable News Update. We'll see you next time.